Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I am your host, Jonathan Icherberg, and today I'm bringing you an interview with Rishabh Raj Jain, director of the short film A Dream Called Kushi, Happiness, bronze medal recipient for documentary at the 2024 Student Academy Awards. Before I jump into the interview, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast player so you can get all the newest episodes as soon as they are released. If you like the interview and want to hear more, please consider leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Rishabh Raj Jain is a cross-format journalist who has actively pursued stories that are often ignored by the mainstream media and given voice to people who have none. His story about a Rohingya woman who helped other refugees flee Myanmar was published by hundreds of newspapers, including the New York Times and the Washington Post. And he joins me on the podcast to talk about his short film, A Dream Called Kushi, Happiness, which recently won the Bronze Award in the documentary category of the 2024 Student Academy Awards. Rishabh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
Now, your film looks at the Rohingya refugee crisis in Bangladesh through the story of one young woman trying to make it out of the refugee camp in order to get an opportunity to be educated in the West. Tell me a little bit about where you first learned of this issue and her story in particular.
Right. Jonathan, this goes back to 2017, 2018. August 2017 is when the genocide in Myanmar against the Rohingya sort of happened. And that's when you started seeing thousands cross over the border into Bangladesh. And then when these numbers started getting really significant and the reports started coming out of what exactly was going on in Myanmar, the world media sort of paid attention. And that's when me, as a video journalist for the Associated Press, I was deployed in October of 2017 for the first time to the Rohingya refugee camps to see what was going on. We reported a bunch of stories for the longest time. That was the first of many trips to the camps. As a reporter for the AP, I went back in 4 times in total over the course of 2 years, and each trip was about 20 to 30 days. And we reported initially a lot about what was happening in Myanmar and the military action against the Rohingya and how the military went about doing it. I was part of a team that published several investigative stories about the findings of mass graves of Rohingya in Myanmar. Gang rapes of Rohingya women by these marauding military and vigilante groups that came through the Rohingya villages. All of that. And so we spent a lot of time talking about what happened in Myanmar because obviously there was very little information about that, and that was our priority at that time. Towards the end of my trips to the camps, though, I started thinking about, okay, we've reported enough about what has happened in Myanmar. What happens now? Because I've been seeing these refugees in the camps for the last 2 years, literally having to build their own houses with bamboo and tarp, and because that's the only thing that they're allowed. And as more of them pour in, this becomes the most crowdest camp in the world. Like the congestion, level of congestion inside the Rohingya camp, especially at that time when it was just coming about, was immense. And that to me that looked like a place that I'd never seen before.
Yeah,
they looked like a people who had been completely ignored. So the question I started asking at that time, Jonathan, was what happens now, and what happens to all these children? And there were a lot of children. Nearly 600,000 out of the million refugees were children under the age of 18. So what happens to them? What do they do now? They're not.
Right.
And so then I find out they're not allowed to really study. They're not allowed to go to school outside of the camps. They're not allowed to go to college. They're not allowed to finish school. And that's kind of when I met Kushi, who had, despite all those challenges, sort of gone ahead and done what she wanted to do, finish school. So we really wanted to use, show my intent with that story at that time with Kushi was to show the Rohingya, the aspiration that Rohingya children have for an education. And that was my introduction to Kushi for the first time.
And Kushi says at one point, they're not supposed to be allowed at school, but she does end up, making it into school. regardless, her friends would ask her, hey, can we come home and see where you live, that sort of thing. But obviously she couldn't allow that because it would reveal her to be a refugee. How big of an impact is that on her, but also the refugees in general, to have to hide that status for fear of being seen as an outsider?
Right, that's their whole life now, is to
Yeah.
play hide and seek, and it's not easy. It's quite hard, as you may imagine, because you have to first disguise yourself with language. So you have to learn the local language, and sort of be able to speak fluent Bangla. Then you have to adopt a Bangladeshi name, and then spend money, which refugees don't have much of because they're not allowed to work. And they were looted of everything in Myanmar and came with barely anything. So then you're somehow supposed to gather some money and then pay bribes to attain local identity cards and get admission into school. So it's a challenge. And then after that, after you've done all that, you have to go about every day, sort of living that lie and
Right. Looking over your
playing
shoulder
this
all the time.
playing this dual role, where as soon as you're out of the camps, you're Bangladeshi, and then that's the identity you have to assume and presume, and then you come back and you're Rohingya again. And it really, I mean, it impacts them greatly. They've become really adept at doing it because obviously you would, because that's the only way that they can access any semblance of normal life. But it's not easy. It takes a toll on them. And in Kushi's case, interestingly enough, now here's a little bit of extra tidbit that you don't get from the film. But when she was applying for her asylum to Canada, the Canadian, and this was with the help of UNHCR. It's not like she was doing it on her own.
Right. Yeah.
UNHCR sort of initiates the whole process and is doing the same with some of the refugees, sending them to different parts of the world as we speak. But as Kushi's turn came and her case came up, and then her documents were sent over to the Canadian immigration. At first, they got back to her saying, you had in fact applied for a student visa on a Bangladeshi passport a few years ago, which she had, and she'd gotten, because she'd gotten admission into a Canadian university at that time.
Right.
And because she had Bangladeshi paperwork at that time, just like other Rohingya do, some Rohingya do, she applied for that student visa, which was rejected because of financial reasons, not because she wasn't admitted into her college.
Right.
So the Canadian officials at that time, the Canadian immigration officials, kind of questioned Kushi whether you're Rohingya or
Right.
are you Bangladeshi.
Sure.
So it poses real challenges later on in life, and then Kushi, Kushi had to make an appeal that you're doing the same to me that everyone else does, is
Yeah.
asking me to prove my identity. Obviously, I had to hide it to go to school, etc., which is why I'd done this, which they eventually understood. And she's in Canada now. But that's the kind of complexities it can also cause.
Sure. It's something that follows you for a long time. Now, you've been following this story, as you mentioned, for many years, initially as a video journalist. What made you want to shift from covering it for the news media to making a longer film about the topic?
Right. And this speaks to the wider question of what made me sort of want to transition into documentaries in general. And I spent almost all my life, undergrad, before that, as a student, a reporter for the Daily Iowan at the University of Iowa, where I did my undergrad. From there to working as an intern for the Times of India, Hindustan Times, and then interning at the AP, that turning into a full-time job in 7 years at the South Asia desk in AP. Journalism has been my life. And I mean, I don't think I'm going to go too far away from it, even in my films,
Sure.
and even in my documentaries. However, I felt that there was a little bit of a limit. The news cycle in itself has a limit, right? It moves on. What is of a lot of interest to the world right now and easier to pitch to your editors right now might not be the same later on.
Right.
And so, but sometimes that sort of really misses out on really getting in depth into some topics, or re-reporting some topics that need more reporting. And I thought that is something that I was running into a lot. I really wanted to go deeper into some stories, which I thought the longer form provides for a bit better. And in general, I wanted to push my skills to a higher level. Documentary video production in general has attained levels that news video production just cannot sort of keep up with. So
Right.
it's just from a skills perspective, I wanted to add on being able to shoot with a variety of cameras, understanding the different things you can do on the edit table, not restricted by the confines of news ethics. And sort of that really helped me understand now how to tell a more impactful visual story, whether it be in the short form or now this new longer form that I've started to like. So I don't know if that answered that question, but that's kind of why I just wanted to go deeper. I thought news sometimes makes for surfacial level reporting, and documentaries and the longer form give you the opportunity to go a bit deeper.
Absolutely. 100% agree. Now, this is one of the more personal documentaries that I've seen, in that you provide your own voiceover at certain points. There's some conversations where we can actually hear you asking Kushi, questions on the audio of the film. How does this personal connection affect how you put together a film like this?
Right. And there's a lot to this that I need to unpack a little bit, and why not, since this is the opportunity where you talk about things that went into production, I'll take the chance and get into it a little bit. So when I first started cutting the film, it was very news-like. I didn't think that I'm in the story, and I wanted to keep the camera and the sound and everything on the people, on Kushi and the other characters, and sort of had them tell the story. And I tried that really hard. I made a rough cut. I made a semblance of a final cut. I presented that in class. And the feedback that I generally got was, this is not one of those stories that even if you want to do it, even if you don't want to do it, you are part of the story,
Right.
because of how the initial reporting for the AP impacted Kushi's life, and the fact that our story gets into, our film gets into that, made, my classmates made me realize, no matter what you do, you're in this story. It's not one of those films or stories where you can avoid not being in it because you're already
Sure.
in it.
Yeah.
So it was on that last day of class that everyone hits me with this, and my world comes crashing down, and obviously we don't have too much time now. It's
Right.
the last day of class, and then it's the screening in 2 months. So I had one of those nights where you cry in your empty bathtub, and then sort of rose from that and called my line producer, translator, life of the project, Shafiq, who's kind of with me throughout the shooting process. And I said, Shafiq, I think people are just not caring enough about these characters. And so and I mean, I need to be in this story because of what the kind of feedback that I'm getting. So what we really need to do is tell it from the most honest perspective that we possibly can. Let's talk about everything. Let's talk about why I wanted to do this story, what I saw with the children, and how everything happened. And let's get ourselves in it. And we made those notes, and we brainstormed in that morning call, and this sort of light bulb went off, and that sort of, it started the re-edit, and then I had some help again from Siddharth Prabhu, who's my consulting editor and also post-production supervisor, and an amazing guy, film student from India, and Swabha Pal, who took control of the edit for 10 days and said, you sit in the passenger seat, and for a few, and then that kind of gave me the time to step back, think of the voiceover, write the voiceover, all of that. And so that's how I decided to put myself in this story. And then when we were able to do that, we just, we felt the impact. It was a whole different story. It was a story about journalism. It was a story about so many other things than just the Rohingya crisis. So and I think that was a more interesting story for people to get people into this film and to care about the Rohingya.
Right. Definitely adds multiple layers to it by presenting it that way. Now, you close the film with a title card that has two very distinct moods. First, that Kushi and her sisters are resuming school in Canada, which you obviously said earlier that they have done so. But then you juxtapose that with the fact that there's still over those 600,000 Rohingya children in Bangladesh being denied their education. What do you hope to achieve by highlighting, obviously this one success of the film, but then there's so many out there that still need help?
Right. And that's the whole point of it all, right? Why make this film is to bring attention to this massive issue of a very large number of children who might not have a future, and whose aspirations are going to get crushed, and who did nothing, because they're children.
Right. Yeah.
How did they contribute to this crisis? Why are they being punished for it? So it really is, it speaks to, obviously it brings attention to Rohingya children, and that's something definitely needs to be done. Hopefully people in Bangladesh, the people in the position of power see it, and we're going to make sure we're going to write letters and reach them and show them this film, and hopefully they're able to do something and recognize this, because already there are voices in Bangladesh that are for educating the Rohingya children, even if they are to be repatriated later on.
Right.
They should be repatriated, educated, so that they're able to represent themselves when they go back.
Sure.
In a better way, and perhaps prevent another genocide. So so one of the goals is to, of course, bring attention to that, because it's very pertinent that something needs to be done for these children. And in general, it's also, it kind of makes people think, because there are a lot of refugee communities being made around the world as we speak.
Yeah.
Today, right, in different parts of the world. And really this brings attention to the fact that amongst those refugee communities are a lot of children who have done nothing, not contributed to anything, any violence, and they're now, they're now in a position where they might not be able to go to school, they might not be able to access normal life, and eventually that adds to the problem. Whatever it is that the world's trying to fight today, it adds to the problem if you let those children stay out of the schools and not have an opportunity to regular life. So, just trying to bring some attention to that.
For sure. And as we record, it has been just over a week since you were at the Student Academy Awards ceremony. What were some of the highlights of that event for you, and the time that you spent in London around those ceremonies?
Yeah, well, it was surreal, to say the least, and so many panels with so many interesting people, filmmakers, talent managers, just everyone that can inspire you to continue to do what you're doing. And I think that's kind of been like the overall message from being at this ceremony is, I'm a news guy. I sit in newsroom. I'm more comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
And this was my first time trying to make anything long form and make any semblance of a film. And for me now, at a crossroad after graduating, thinking about, where do I go from here? Should I go back to the newsroom? This was a really good encouragement to sort of continue to hone this skill and see, and to go ahead with another few ideas that I have, and now be connected with so many people around the world who can help me make those ideas more real and come to life. So,
sure.
So that's, it's been truly inspiring. I've met so many people that I'm going to be ringing up and sort of bothering for the next few months, but it's great. And the Academy also has a mentorship program, so we're all now going to get a mentor from the Academy who's going to sort of guide us through our career for the next 7 to 8 months. So it's fantastic. They really go out of their way to encourage and support students who won these awards.
Yeah, no, it's a really fantastic program. And you mentioned, trying to get in contact with people in Bangladesh and elsewhere, but are there any other festivals or screenings coming up that you know of where people can check out the film?
So we were just, we missed it, but we were just at the Sphere Film Festival in Seattle on October 19th. This is one of the largest South Asian film festivals outside of South Asia. Also one of the only Academy qualifying, and we also got the Audience Choice Award at the festival.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Which is nice. Thank you. But nothing planned as of yet, because we've also had a tough time trying to get into festivals. We're going to be doing another push, and perhaps be hearing of more screenings. And whenever I do, I'll be sure to update you, so that you can at least add it to your comment section so people know where to
Absolutely.
go.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm happy to share my trailer or anything else that you may want as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, I have a couple questions not specifically related to the film, but before I move on to those, is there anything else you want to touch on about A Dream Called Kushi, Happiness?
I mean, I really hope that this film is watched by a lot of people who in the Western world, because in the Western world, compared to the rest of the world, there are more privileges, and it's nice to sometimes see the other side, because it makes you realize your privileges
Sure.
a bit more, and that's a good process. It's a very humbling process. So even though this is a film about journalism, Rohingya refugees, all of that, it's also a film that can sort of humble you a little bit. So, and that is, humility is something that the world definitely needs today. So,
100% agree. Couldn't agree more with that.
Right.
Now, this might be the hardest question I ask, but if you had to pick your top 3 films of all time, what would they be?
It definitely is the toughest question you've asked. Wow. Top 3 films of all time. I'm just, this is gonna be a biased answer, because it's just
Go for
whatever
it.
I've watched recently
Yeah.
will feature here in this, right? I'll try to name a bit of both. So Waltz with Bashir is an animated documentary that I like a lot, by Ari Foreman. Then there is this recent film, Society of the Snow, which was nominated for the Academy
Yep.
last year. It didn't win, but I really think it should have, because it was fantastic. And then I really, because this is important to current times, The Settlers by Shimon Dotan, this is a documentary. Shimon Dotan is an Israeli filmmaker, fiction, non-fiction, and also a professor at NYU. And The Settlers is an amazing documentary, which sort of gives you great perspective about the settlements in West Bank and Gaza and how they originated. And so it gives you a lot of context for what is happening right now in the world.
Fantastic. Well, we'll definitely put some links to those where people can check them out. If you could invite any 3 movie characters to your next dinner party, who would they be and why?
All right, movie characters to my dinner parties. This is a bit crazy. Yeah, I didn't even see this in your question list, because I would have written down answers to this. Can I just name actors or filmmakers that I would maybe invite to a dinner party?
Sure, we can tweak it for that.
Right,
Go
it
for
might
it.
be a little easy for me. I would love to invite Rory Kennedy, who is a documentary filmmaker and the youngest daughter of Robert F. Kennedy. I'm sure she won't come, but why not try?
We're assuming that they'll all come regardless.
Right. Rory Kennedy would be one. Shah Rukh Khan from India would be a good, cool person to have at the dinner, because he'd sort of take over and make sure there's not an awkward moment of silence.
Right.
So Shah Rukh Khan, the jester, would be invited as well. And then I would really like to have Riz Ahmed.
Okay.
Riz Ahmed is someone who's really very inspirational. I like his music. I like his films. I like when he writes films, because he's short that he sort of co-directed with Cardia made it to, he won the Oscar.
Yeah.
Last year or last year.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Riz Ahmed's a genius, like perhaps one of the coolest brown people on the planet. So yeah, him.
I'd like an invitation to that party too, if you can make that
Yeah,
one
please,
happen.
Jonathan, please.
Now, do you have any books that you could recommend that you've read recently? They could be fiction or nonfiction and don't necessarily have to have anything related to movies.
Right. This is actually, this is and from a perspective of someone who's trying to understand the First Amendment in America, and because that sort of translates to everything that we do and are sort of based off of. Make No Law, by Anthony Lewis, is a great book. Check it out. It takes you through the Sullivan case and the First Amendment, but so many other things. and sort of gives you this sort of historical review of the nuances and the intricacies of the First Amendment. So make no law.
Excellent. Good recommendation. We'll have to check that out. I'll put the link to that as well for people to check out. And lastly, before we wrap things up, do you have any other projects lined up that you're working on, and also where people can follow you on social media to keep up on what you're doing?
Right. I'm on Instagram you have my Instagram handle. I'm also on Facebook, which why would you want to follow me on Facebook? But I'm also getting back on X. X deactivated my old profile because I went over 30 days of deactivation. But so I'm coming back on X soon. But Instagram is best.
Sure.
The film also has an Instagram page. It's called A Dream Called Kushi. There's other non-fiction film projects that I've sort of developed or am developing. One of them is this historical look at the origin of laws against cannabis and how it originated in the West and impacted countries in the East,
Sure.
and kind of where it's gone since then. This is like some with historical context. I have characters on the ground who've been impacted by these laws, who are going to tell this story. The other one's a shorter film project. It's a personal doc about one of my uncles who's also a filmmaker in Mumbai. He started in Bollywood, but then he, due to some financial issues, sort of got demoted to Bhojpuri or regional cinema. And so just, trying to look at like what the struggles of a struggling filmmaker are in Mumbai, in Bollywood. So trying to develop these two projects further.
Wonderful. Well, those both sound interesting. We'll be on the lookout for those, and I'll put a link to the social media for both you and the film in the show notes as well.
Hey, thank you, Jonathan, so much for doing this. This is, I have to say, this is the first proper sit-down interview about the film, or anyone who's asked me like real questions about the production process, and so this has been great. Thank you so much for doing it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today and for sharing your film, and congratulations once again on the Student Academy Award.
Thank you so much. Look forward to hearing this one.
Thank you again to my guest today, Rishabh Raj Jain. His short film, A Dream Called Kushi, Happiness, won the Bronze Award in the documentary category at the 2024 Student Academy Awards. The Oscar Project podcast is written and produced by me, Jonathan Eacherberg, with editing assistance from Joshua Eacherberg. If you want more movie coverage, check out The Oscar Project on Substack at theoscarproject.substack.com, and be sure to come back for my next episode where I will be speaking with Florian Maurice, Maxime Fultzer, and Estelle Bonardel, three of the creators of the short film Au revoir, Mon Monde. Until then, I hope to see you at the movies.